Hey there. In this video, we will understand how APITect is an API lifecycle platform and how its design-first approach and AI-powered engine helps to reduce the rework by improving the API development workflow. Let's start by designing our first API. Here you can set the basic details like the API name, the method, the endpoint. Based on the endpoint, it will derive the path variables and query parameters, and also the data type and data format. And go to the next step and set the authorization and headers and cookies. We will set a basic bearer token authorization. And now coming to the request payload. APITect supports popular types like application JSON, multi-part form data, and form URL encoded. Here you don't have to manually define every single field, and instead can just paste your expected request, and from that APITect will derive the field name, the data type, data format, if it's not null or nullable, or you can also set if it's required or optional. From the values, if it can detect a certain type, but if the field name doesn't match the popular nomenclature, it will give you suggestions based on industry standards to make sure you are always following the best nomenclature practices. You can even set other constraints like a minimum length, maximum length, any regex pattern, or if the value should come from any fixed set of enums. Now you can set the response as a normal application JSON or also a streaming response like GPT. You can set a new field, let's call it response. You can set any of these types depending on your requirements. And now let's save this API design. Based on this design, now APITect has instantly generated a mock API that's ready to use. And also on the left side, you can see the design document that covers every single aspect, like all the constraints that we had defined just now. And on the right side, you can see the sample request and sample response that reflect the same API behavior. You can also get the code snippet in any of your language of preference. It allows you to export the same API in OpenAPI or popular TypeScript based code. You can come back to here. Now we all know that in vibe coding, better the prompt, better the output. So APITect generates a production grade ready to use prompt with its official integration with all the popular AI IDs. So now you can ensure that all this possible details of the API are covered in the prompt, and you will get the best possible output out of this. Similarly, it also generates hundreds of test cases based on all the possible scenarios, so your QA can ensure that all the sanitary use cases are covered. Similarly, you can test the same mock API or the live API directly. So let's try entering some value here. And body is prefilled as per the dynamic request. Let's send this, and as we can see, it has given us a 400 error telling us the ID is not following the type. So now let's correct that. And yeah, as you can see that not only you get to know the response is coming or not, but also is response valid or not. Similarly, once your API is ready, you can replace this base URL with your live API URL and test the same live API. So make sure that not only the API is working, but is the API working exactly as expected. Now, instead of just manual testing, you can also run AI based test. So now not only you get the manual confirmation, but also an automated guarantee that all those hundreds of possible test scenarios are also working correctly for your live API. This gives you the assurance that there is no manual mistake possible and every single possibility is covered in testing. You can download all the test cases and the results and see what the possible edge cases were covered. We also offer a similar Swagger test UI depending on your team's workflow, and it is 100% compatible with the industry standards. Coming back to this, not only you can just design the API, but in future if the same API needs to be updated with any change, let's change the ID to be number. Instead of just overwriting the same API design, you can also ensure that the versioning is followed. So in future you can always track the versions and all the changes and ensure that there are no surprises, and if needed it is very easy to roll back to older versions. This comes handy when this same API is shared with your team members, so whenever any change is done by any member, everyone else is informed about the change and there are no surprises when it comes to live API changing. You can also export the API with Swagger supported formats to any external team member, and even import your existing workspaces from your Swagger collection, Postman collections, Insomnia or Requestly. This same API can also be moved or cloned to different workspaces depending on your requirements. So now, as we saw, this covers the full aspect of the API lifecycle, starting from the design to development to testing and validation and documentation.